dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original? It's your boy DJ Nuki, your girl.
Sierra Nicole.
Back on the channel, man. Hey, we got another balling for y'all, man. We got these spoiled rich kids cut off for fun.
Child.
Oh, hey. You know how many stories are like these though? So I wonder, who are you talking about?
All right.
Like, you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But hey, with that being said, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go, man. You want to first support, all you got to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
liking it with a thumbs up.
That's all we ask for, man. Go check us out on other channels, other platforms. Just show us some support, bro. Cause y'all be slacking. But we be slacking too. We gotta be on our, bro. But with that being said, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's check it out. Let's see what it's about. You ready?
I'm ready.
I already said. No, sorry.
Today's story is about a crime so notorious it has been dubbed the crime of the century. But the reason for its notoriety has less to do with the crime itself and more to do with who committed it. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please downgrade the Like Button's Netflix account so they're forced to sit through all the unskippable ads. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Ballen, what you know that we don't know? We in Netflix here. Hey. I have no idea. I never knew Netflix having ads. Now, Hulu, Amazon... Do Amazon Prime even have ads? Nah. But Hulu do.
Yeah, Hulu does.
Peacock do. Nah. Peacock does.
I think those, yeah.
Paramount does.
Okay.
But Netflix, nah.
I said, hold on. Unless the different, I don't know.
What about HBO? HBO? Nah.
Do it?
Ballen, you speaking something you don't need to be speaking, bro.
On the evening of Wednesday, May 21st, 1924, a man named Jacob Franks walked up the steps to his mansion, and right as he went to open his door, his butler opened it up, welcomed him inside, and Jacob smiled at the butler and stepped in. Jacob had just spent a long day at his office in Chicago, Illinois, doing a big real estate deal, and now he was just happy to be home with his wife and his 3 kids. Jacob was an incredibly successful business person who had made a name for himself first in the early 1900s when he ran a bank that specialized in giving out these enormous loans to gamblers. But it wasn't until he was named the president of the Rockford Watch Company and he expanded into real estate that he became outrageously wealthy. His fortune in today's dollars would have been around $70 million. But now that Jacob was so well established in the business world in Chicago, he was trying to make a more conscious effort to spend more time at home with his wife and kids. And so as soon as he walked past his butler into his mansion, he hung up his hat and his jacket, and he went to find his wife, Flora, to tell her about an idea he had for a trip for that upcoming weekend. But when Jacob found Flora, she was not remotely interested in talking about their weekend plans, because Flora was very worked up about their youngest son, Bobby. Bobby, who was 14 years old, was supposed to come home right after school, but it was now 6 p.m. and he still hadn't shown up, and she had no idea where he was. And Jacob's reaction to this news was just to feel kind of aggravated. Bobby was generally a really good kid. He was a student at a prestigious boys' school right down the road, and his teacher was convinced that Bobby was the smartest kid in his entire grade. Bobby was a member of the school's debate team and regularly beat the older kids. And Bobby was just a natural leader and very hardworking and kind. But Bobby could also be fairly irresponsible sometimes, specifically in terms of coming home on time. This was not the first time that Bobby had not come home by curfew. So Jacob told Flora, don't worry about it. This is something Bobby does. He likely lost track of time. And as Jacob and Flora are having this discussion, Bobby's older brother came into the room and suggested to his dad, Jacob, that perhaps Bobby was across the street at Richard's house. Richard was Bobby's cousin, playing tennis on their private court. Richard and Bobby were quite close, even though they were 4 years apart. Richard was 18, Bobby was 14, but they really bonded over tennis, and so that was something they did all the time. And so Jacob said he would go across the street and see if Bobby was there, and he also told his wife, Flora, to just continue to call around town and see if anybody knew where Bobby might be. And so Jacob left his mansion and began walking across the street towards Richard's family's mansion to see if his son was there. Now, this neighborhood that Jacob lived in was one of the most exclusive neighborhoods really in the entire country, but definitely within Chicago's city limits. It was called South Kenwood, and basically imagine a street where every house is a huge mansion, and every mansion is home to some business tycoon or famous person, and all the families who lived in this neighborhood had a full staff of maids and butlers and drivers and fleets of private cars. I mean, these people who lived in South Kenwood were literally the richest of the rich. And so Jacob, he gets across the street, he's standing in front of Richard's family's mansion, and he looks around the side and he can see the private tennis court where his son and Richard would always play, but it's totally vacant, and in fact, the house is just totally quiet. No one's home. When Jacob got back to his own home, he found his wife pacing around in the parlor looking really concerned, and so Jacob immediately asked her, what'd you learn? What's going on? And she would tell Jacob that she had spoken to one of Bobby's friends who told her that Bobby had umpired a baseball game after school and had left to walk back home at around 5 p.m. The school and the baseball field where Bobby would have been was only about 3 blocks away from their home. And now it was 6:30 p.m. So it's been an hour and a half since Bobby had supposedly began his walk home. And so by now he certainly should be here, but of course he wasn't. At this point, Jacob went from feeling aggravated with his son to being concerned for his son's safety, despite the fact that he's thinking, okay, well, my son is likely somewhere in this neighborhood in South Kenwood, one of the safest, richest, best places in the country. He's got to be okay, but I really want to find him. And so Jake...
I don't know, man. I'm like, neighborhood, but I don't know the crime. Like, they just because you live in a rich neighborhood, I never look at, like, you know what I'm saying, just rich neighborhoods, the safest neighborhood. Reason why y'all got stuff that people want to take. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, that would make you a target, right? But I guess, you know what I'm saying, like, you'll be more secured around in the area, or if anything happens, people be more reluctant to, you know what I'm saying. Rich neighborhoods be the most nosiest neighborhoods, though. Everybody got an eye looking.
And maybe in their, defense.
And the time.
That too, and mainly nothing probably happened, like, really in the city, you know what I'm saying, or that neighborhood.
But that's a little nerve-wracking, though, to 3 blocks.
Yeah.
That's...
It's 6, it don't take that long.
Nah.
Richest, best places in the country, he's got to be okay, but I really want to find him. And so Jacob would call one of his very close friends who lived in this neighborhood, who also happened to be a former state senator, and he asked him to come over and basically look around the neighborhood for Bobby. When the state senator friend arrived at Jacob's house, the two men left and began walking down the street lined with mansions, making their way towards the school where Bobby supposedly had been umpiring. And when they got there, they saw there was no baseball game happening, and the school was dark and closed for the night. But Jacob and his friend decided that, maybe it was possible that after umpiring this game, when Bobby had begun his walk home, maybe he had taken a detour into the school to get something, and then perhaps the doors got shut and locked on him. And so Jacob and his friend went to the school and looked for a way to basically break into the school. And sure enough, they would find an open window, they'd open it up, they would climb inside, and they would search the entire school, but Bobby was not in there. At this point, Jacob was really starting to panic. His friend was trying to calm him down, but Jacob is now thinking, something is terribly wrong with my son. And so the two men actually ran from the school back to Jacob's house. And when they went inside, Jacob immediately called out to his wife to see if maybe she had located Bobby. But when he called Flora's name, there was no response. And so Jacob and his friend, they run inside and they make their way towards the parlor, which is where they had last seen Flora before they left. And when they walked in there, they found Flora lying on the ground, totally lifeless, with the phone off the hook right next to her hand. And so Jacob and the senator, they run over and they begin shaking Flora, and suddenly she wakes up with a gasp, and she looks up at Jacob and just begins sobbing hysterically. And after Jacob finally calmed her down, she would tell him that after they had left to go to the school, she had received a phone call. And at first, she thought it was Bobby calling to check in. But when she answered it, it wasn't Bobby. It was a man's voice she didn't recognize who told her that Bobby had been kidnapped. He was safe for now, but if they went to police, something terrible would happen to him. This mystery...
I don't never trust those type of kidnappings. When you go to the police, 9 times out of 10, you already done something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, anytime you call somebody, be like, hey, we
And
kidnapped.
how I'm set up, you tell me not to do something, baby, I'm going to do it.
She passed the hell out, though. To the point she laid it, and then she come.
I'm getting all the help I can.
She passed out for real,
Right?
bro.
It's a child.
was safe for now, but if they went to police, something terrible would happen to him. This mystery man also told Flora that they would be in touch soon with more information, and then they hung up. And Flora had been so overwhelmed by what she was told that she had fainted, and that was why they found her on the ground. That night, Jacob, Flora, and the state senator friend stayed up late going over, what they should do. Of course, they wanted to go to police, but this felt like a credible threat that Bobby could be harmed if they did that. And so they just went back and forth over how to handle this horrible situation. But by 2 a.m., they had made a decision. The state senator had some close friends and connections in the police department, and so they decided that they would go talk to the police, but they would swear them to secrecy so the kidnapper or kidnappers wouldn't know the police were investigating. And so, a few hours later, when the police department opened up, Jacob and the state senator friend went to the police. They spoke to the highest ranking officer who was sworn to secrecy, and then that morning, the police would begin a quiet investigation into Bobby's kidnapping. At the same time this investigation was beginning, on the morning of May 22nd, 1924, a man named Morton D. Ballard drove through downtown Chicago in a luxury car known as a Willis Knight. He pulled this luxury car into a parking lot right next to a rental car company, and after parking the car, Morton got out, he went inside of the shop, and he handed the keys over to the clerk behind the desk. The clerk would ask Morton, how did it go with your rental car? And Morton would say, oh, it was perfect, went totally fine. After that, Morton thanked the clerk, he turned around and walked outside where another luxury car was waiting for him, being driven by his good friend, Lewis Mason. And once Morton had climbed inside, the two men smiled and drove off and disappeared into traffic. That same morning, Jacob and Flora received a letter from the kidnapper or kidnappers demanding $10,000 in small unmarked bills, and if they gave this money over, they would get their son back. And immediately, Jacob went to the bank and got the money, but before he could actually deliver the money to the kidnappers at the location they had specified in this letter, the police, who were quietly investigating, discovered a clue that would break the case wide open. It would take over a week to unravel this bizarre clue, but it all started to come together when the police brought in Morton D. Ballard and Lewis Mason for questioning. Here is the shocking story that detectives were finally able to piece together about what happened to Bobby Franks. On May 7th, 1924, so 2 weeks before Bobby went missing, Morton D. Ballard walked into a hotel in Chicago called the Morrison and rented room 1031. He would tell the front desk that he wanted them to hold his mail for him, and over the next couple of days, Morton would come in and he would get his mail from the front desk, but he didn't appear to ever actually go up to his room. Finally, a suspicious maid at the Morrison Hotel, who had been going into room 1031 every day to clean it, only to discover that Morton was not in there and the room was totally untouched and clean already, she went in one morning and saw Morton was not in there, and she would actually just open up one of Morton's suitcases that he had left inside. And instead of the suitcase containing clothes or toiletries, it just contained a bunch of random library books. As it happened, after this maid found...
Hold on.
My nerves
'Cause
were
we
so
all
bad.
thought the same thing.
I was like, oh my gosh, please don't tell me.
But it would have had an odor though. He would have.
Because it has been, what?
Yeah. I was. But he also said a week before he went missing.
Right.
So.
So.
It just contained a bunch of random library books. As it happened, after this maid found this strange suitcase full of books, Morton stopped coming to the hotel. He stopped getting his mail, he did not claim his luggage, and he didn't pay the bill. He just kind of vanished. On May 9th, so just a couple of days after Morton first booked that room at the Morrison Hotel, Morton also opened a bank account in Chicago. He also made his first appearance at that car rental company where he asked for the Willis Knight car. The rental company would not just let anybody take a Willis Knight car. You needed a reference to show that you were someone who could pay for this type of vehicle. And so Morton's friend, Lewis Mason, would give him that reference and allow him to rent the Willis Knight car. About a week and a half later, on May 21st, so the day Bobby went missing, Morton and Lewis were driving around South Kenwood in their Willis Knight car when they spotted Bobby by himself walking down the road. Now, Lewis recognized Bobby, and he knew that Bobby was an incredible tennis player, and Lewis had a question for Bobby about a particular tennis racket. And so Lewis, who was in the front seat of the car, told Morton, who was driving, to pull over so Lewis could talk to Bobby. And so Morton pulled over, Lewis rolled his window down, he called over to Bobby, Bobby came over, and before long, Lewis and Bobby were talking about this tennis racket. And then when that conversation naturally wrapped up, Lewis offered Bobby a ride the rest of the way home, because that was where Bobby was walking to when they stopped him. And so Lewis climbed into the back seat, Morton stayed in the driver's seat, and Bobby climbed inside and sat in the front seat. And then once those two were situated, Morton pulled away from the curb and began driving towards Bobby's house. And as they were driving to Bobby's house, Bobby just kind of continued talking about this tennis racket because that was the thing they were talking about. And as he was mid-sentence, Lewis from the back seat reached into his pocket, pulled out a chisel, and then lunged forward and began smashing Bobby in the back of the head over and over again with this chisel. And as Bobby is screaming in pain and trying to protect himself, Lewis lunges forward, grabs Bobby, drags him into the back seat, and then holds him down, pulls a rag out of his pocket, and jams it into Bobby's throat. And then he closes Bobby's mouth and holds it shut until Bobby goes still. After that, Lewis kind of grimaced at all of Bobby's blood all over him, and he kind of pushed Bobby down onto the floorboards below.
Wouldn't it be all blood on shit all in the car? Well, it's 1920, so in the 20s, so they probably ain't think. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the police.
Yes, it would be. I would think.
But I'm saying like the rental car company. Well, yeah, I don't know, man.
All of Bobby's blood all over him, and he kind of pushed Bobby down onto the floorboards below, and then Lewis calmly climbed back into the front seat and sat down, and meanwhile, Morton has not remotely reacted to what's just happened. This is just business as usual. Morton and Lewis did not go to Bobby's house, but instead drove towards Indiana. And on their drive to Indiana, they would stop at a roadside restaurant and eat hot dogs and root beers with their car parked right near this restaurant with Bobby's body just totally exposed laying out on the floorboards of the back seat. Morton and Lewis would eventually get into Indiana, and they would head to this particular forest that Morton was familiar with because he was a bird watcher and often came out here. And when they got to this forest, they parked in this clearing, they got out, they checked on Bobby and confirmed that he was dead. So they pulled him out, they stripped all of his clothes off of him, they rolled him up in a rug, and then they dragged him over to this drainage pipe that sat underneath some railroad tracks in this swampy area, and they jammed him inside of it. And then they got back in their car, they drove back to Chicago, at which point Morton called Bobby's mother, Flora, and informed her that her son was kidnapped but alive, even though he wasn't, and don't call the police, we'll be in touch soon. That night, Morton and Lewis would burn all of the clothes they had stripped off of Bobby. They would also clean the interior of their Willis Knight rental car, and then they would play a game of cards together before going to bed. The next day, May 22nd, so the same day that police began their quiet investigation into Bobby's kidnapping, Morton and Lewis would send that letter to Jacob and Flora demanding $10,000 for the safe return of Bobby. But unfortunately, before Lewis and Morton could claim their ransom money, Bobby's body was discovered. In fact, that day he was discovered. A walker was cutting through the woods in Indiana and saw Bobby in the pipe. And so when Morton and Lewis realized that, the jig is up, the family's never going to pay for their son because he's dead, they just returned their Willis Knight rental car and went back to their normal lives as if nothing had ever happened. But unbeknownst to him, Morton had accidentally dropped his eyeglasses right next to Bobby's body when they dumped him in the woods in Indiana. And Morton's eyeglasses were very unique. In fact, there was only one store in the world that sold this particular kind of eyeglasses. And so when detectives got the call about Bobby's body being found, they would also find these glasses. And that was the big clue, because these glasses led detectives to the store where they were sold, and the owner of the store was able to say that, yep, those particular glasses were sold to Morton. And when
that is crazy, bro. Not the glasses, bro.
The glasses.
The glasses ratted you out.
I'm glad.
Wow.
I'm glad it did. I'm glad you dropped them glasses. That is sad.
Wow, that's crazy.
Was able to say that, yep, those particular glasses were sold to Morton. And when detectives went to Morton, Morton immediately pointed the finger at Lewis, saying that Morton didn't do anything to Bobby, Lewis did. But about a week later, on May 31st, both Morton and Lewis would confess to police that they murdered Bobby. But far more shocking than what Morton and Lewis had done was who they were, because Morton and Lewis were not their real names. The two men who killed Bobby Franks were rich kids just like Bobby who lived in South Kenwood. They created two fake names, Morton D. Ballard and Lewis Mason, and then they booked room 1031 at the Morrison Hotel. Now, they had no intention of actually staying at this hotel, and so they just left that suitcase full of books inside of the room to make it appear like they were staying there. But in reality, the only reason they booked that room is they needed a physical mailing address that was connected to their fake personas. And so after booking this room, they began sending mail to Morton D. Ballard and Lewis Mason at the Morrison Hotel, room 1031. And then after collecting that mail, which served as a sort of proof of legal name and address, they were able to open a bank account in Chicago. They dumped some money into that, and then again, they used their proof of legal name and address to rent that Willis Knight car, and then used money from their phony bank account to pay for it. And then once they had their luxury car, it was time to go kill. In reality, Morton was actually a 19-year-old prodigy named Nathan Leopold. He spoke 5 languages, he had already graduated from college, and he was a nationally respected ornithologist, which is someone who studies birds. Nathan's IQ was so high, it literally couldn't be measured. His father was the president of a very successful steamship company, and Nathan was planning to attend Harvard University in the fall to get yet another college degree. And Lewis was actually 18-year-old Richard Loeb, who was Bobby's cousin and one of his best friends. Bobby and Richard played tennis together all the time in Richard's private court, which is where Bobby's father went first to go looking for his son. Like Nathan, Richard was also a genius. He was the youngest person ever to have graduated from the University of Michigan. He graduated at 17 years old. And to celebrate the occasion, Richard's father, who in today's dollars was worth about $175 million, he was a retired vice president for the major retail store Sears, he bought Richard a custom golf course. He built him his own golf course. That was his graduation present. And at the time of Bobby's murder, Richard was actually enrolled at the University of Chicago's law school studying to become a lawyer. Nathan and Richard would very proudly tell investigators that they didn't kill Bobby to get money out of his parents. Nathan and Richard were fabulously wealthy. The money meant nothing. Instead, they had come up with this scheme and killed Bobby because of their belief in the philosopher Nietzsche's concept of supermen. Men whose superiority allows them to rise above all ordinary rules, ethics, and laws. Basically, Nathan and Richard believed they were so much better than everybody else in the world that if they wanted to kill someone, they should be able to. And Bobby seemed like a pretty easy target.
Wow.
After Nathan and Richard confessed, they were put under arrest, But a chauffeur was allowed to come to the police station and drop off silk pajamas for them to wear in custody, and instead of being held in a cell, they were allowed to stay in a hotel. But ultimately, they both were sentenced to life in prison. Bobby's family never recovered from his murder, and his father, Jacob, would die just 4 years after his son died. As for Nathan, he would be murdered in prison in 1936 by another inmate. And as for Richard, he would serve his time and get paroled and then die of natural causes in 1971. Today, the murder of Bobby Franks is often referred to as the crime of the century.
Wow.
So that's going to do it.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. You wanna go?
You go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, this case is very bizarre. To fathom the fact that your own cousin take you out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's your cousin, somebody you have grown a bond to, trusting enough to get in the car. And my thing is, I ain't gonna hold you. The situation where this was kind of blew me. Y'all two riding around in the car, right? You know what I'm saying? You drive, I'm in the passenger seat. Skirt. But you driving. Hey, Morton.
I was like, you still want me to drive? Like, what we doing?
Hey, Morton, pull over. My little cousin want to ask me something. That was already premeditated. Y'all just had to figure out. I think the whole situation was very premeditated. Y'all already had y'all victim in play. Cause y'all 100% planned this out. Tried to plan it out to the T. You know what they say about them geniuses. Only thing is, y'all was too smart for your own good.
Yeah.
Cause to be honest, more we ain't using no fake name. Nathan said, "Hey man, he should have common sense." Well, most geniuses, you know, lack a little bit. But I ain't got my glasses.
Yeah.
But yeah, good thing you dropped them bitches.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? If you had, but y'all pre-plotted the whole thing. For one, y'all went and got a hotel room. Y'all even pre-plotted the names. Y'all sending the mail, because back in the day, y'all know that's how you verify a lot of things is about mailing address and the name that's on the mail. So you have identification. Oh yeah, this is my name. I just don't have my license on me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, with my identification. But you used to be able to use mail as a form of identification or verification. Then y'all went open up bank accounts, so y'all already knew y'all was gonna ask for ransom money. Why the luxury car? But how the fuck y'all was able to clean? You know how hard how hard it is to get blood, and to get blood out of a car?
They probably
out of a carpet. I don't know how the cars were back in the day. Maybe it was more leather on the seats and stuff,
well,
especially with fancy cars.
If they planned and plotted everything and knew that they were going to do, they probably looked up something.
But they are geniuses.
Yeah,
so,
they
you know
probably
what I'm
had all this
They know chemicals to.
Had all this plan.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
And with it being so fresh, it probably was a little bit easier to get out. And then they returned the car, whatever they did, child.
And I want to know, I do want to know how closely related Bobby and Richard are. Like, are we first cousins, second cousins? It really don't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Because because Richard just grew up probably idolizing his older cousin.
Yeah.
Like, I'm into the same things. You know how certain cousins be, especially when you got a big cousin, especially if you're the only child. So your big cousin is kind of looked at as a big brother or sister. So Bobby could possibly have been looking at Richard like an older brother.
Well, he had an older brother.
Did he?
Yeah. He had a brother.
Right.
But it's the fact that...
he never said anything else about it.
Yeah, but it's the fact that y'all both like tennis.
Yeah.
So that's what really connected y'all.
And like Ballen said, Bobby he was over there a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of times when they looking for...
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's the first place your dad goes when, trying to see, like, hey, let me go see if he's heard anything or seen him.
Y'all are from wealth. You know how much, like, y'all are wealthy as hell. Probably can get Well, shit, y'all were going to Harvard. One of y'all was going to Harvard. So you know how like hard that school to get into. You have so much smarts, because you know some people have the smarts, but they might not have the money behind them, and some people have the money but don't have the smarts behind it.
Yeah.
But when you got the money and the smarts, bro, your life is like. And how the fuck? How many smart motherfuckers are in your family?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you got Bobby is legit. The teachers calling him smart. The teachers calling him like the smartest kid
in his grade.
And his grade, probably in the damn school, they probably feel like.
Yeah.
And then Richard, smart as a mother. Him and Nathan.
Yeah.
Who they say Nathan was so smart where they couldn't even get him like his IQ number because it was so high. They couldn't even, it was off the chart. They couldn't even rank him. Like, come on, bro. Like, y'all had.
Well, no, I was just about to say, in a lot of situations, some people do be too smart for their own good. Like, in this sense, like, y'all, like, whatever the book was called, because I can't remember, whatever they was following, or whatever, to feel like they were better than everyone, and if they wanted to go out and do what they wanted to do, that they could.
Well, let me ask you, since you said that, let me ask you this. Do you think the money made them feel that way, the wealth, or do you think the smart made them feel that way, or
I feel like a combination of both, because I feel like when you have so much money, it comes with power in a lot of sense. You feel untouchable,
and then you throw on the genius side of it.
Yeah, you like, oh, I could do what I want. You know, my parents or my dad, or I get away, or they'll get me out of it.
And at that time, to be real, if it wasn't for the classes, they literally would have got away with murder, because they got the blood at the car. They were smart. Of that time, they had every strategy there was. They just forgot one simple thing. Yeah, it was, and that's to get his glasses.
It was definitely glasses, and it was a good thing that the person that found Bobby's body was walking by, because then y'all wouldn't have, at the time, because then y'all possibly wouldn't have had a body or knew where to even start to look, because y'all went to a different state to dump his body. You know what I'm saying? So, and
the fact that, you know what I'm saying, y'all got the Carter blended with the neighborhood.
And they would have never thought Richard, his cousin, Nathan, they too smart. Like, come on, you would have never thought.
And then you think about it, we mourning, family mourning, you know what I'm saying, cousin gone. Yeah. I'm sure Richard's family went over. Yeah. I'm sure y'all had some kind of moment where y'all came together, gathered information. Richard should have known, you know what I'm saying, the police was involved. That's your own cousin. Yeah. I'm sure. Or did you try to take yourself that far away from the situation? So, you know what I'm saying? Either way it goes, it's still effed up.
It's on so many levels. It's
because, effed up. Have you ever heard of this case at all?
Never.
But, because, like I said, anytime, like, I heard trial of the century. Well, folks say the OJ case. Some say the Mendez twins. Well, the Mendez brothers, wherever they are. And then you got this case now.
Well, maybe it was named that at that time.
He still says some people still reference it.
Well, to me, that is kind of, come on.
You gotta hear about the Mendez case, though.
I kind of think I know a little bit about that.
It's very similar, though, but the only bad part about them, they killed their parents.
Well, regardless, it ain't no competition. It's still fucked up on so many levels. Like, regardless, this case, that case, the next one, it's messed up.
And that's the only reason why this boy really got in the car with y'all is because he knew where he felt as though he could trust his own cousin. And I'm sure he was around Nathan.
At some point,
some points. Because Nathan
y'all all stay around in the same neighborhood.
Same neighborhood.
This is where the rich,
He always kicking it with Richard, always going to see Richard. So I'm sure Nathan has been around. So he ain't looking at y'all as no threat. Then for you to get in the back seat, that's like, because most of the times you driving, pull up in the skirt. I'm in the seat. Hey man, hop in. We'll take you home. Not I'm getting out the car. You sitting in the front seat. That was a setup, bro.
That's sad.
And then Nathan can casually just drive. Yeah. AKA Morton just drive, not give two fucks while a whole murder is happening right by you, and you just like, yeah, buddy, you dead today.
That's sad.
You got him dead. All right, Richard.
And then y'all go eat hot dogs.
I'm telling you,
y'all strip him out his clothes.
Is that a psychopath?
Burn his clothes. Play some card. Well, clean the blood. Play a little card game before y'all go to sleep. Return the card. Like, what are y'all like? What? I'm so.
Could you call them psychopaths?
And that's behavior. Yeah.
No
emotional.
A lot of them be smart as fuck.
Well, I'm saying since I don't have any like somebody diagnosed them with that. But
you know what's crazy?
Yeah,
though?
Most definitely they are.
And I do feel like if they had got away with this, this was not about to be the last murder. Possibly they were gonna go on a killer. If they got away with this one, they were gonna go on a killer spree and kill plenty of others. And you want me to tell you how much privilege they knew they had? Look how y'all arrested them.
Brought them silk pajamas.
Silk pajamas, big.
And let them stay in the hotel.
Big. And you know what? That's the reason why Nathan got killed in jail by another inmate, because you always thought you was better. Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, ain't no way you talk to him. We don't know how you was talking to the other inmates. We don't know how you like moved nothing. Around. Your brain, you think you too smart for your own good.
Maybe they heard what happened through whatever and thought,
True that too.
But yeah, and it's sad that Bobby's father just 4 years later passed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's sad.
Because I know, think about it like this: you find out your son died because whether it be your nephew or your little cousin, whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know the relationship amongst the family, but let's just say, for instance, this situation, Bobby and Richard were first cousins. Mm-hmm. You just found out your nephew killed your son. And your son was 14. Yeah. And then you got to look over there at them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That drives a family apart. Yeah. That brings worry on. I'm surprised the mother was able to hold strong. Right. As much as she was able to. You know what I'm saying? The father, he probably tried, and that trying to be strong probably deteriorated because I'm sure at the end of the day he had to be strong for the family. Yeah. But that's deteriorating at his health though. You know what I'm saying? That's a crazy situation. That's crazy. Very, very sad situation. Man. Hey man, make sure y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts in the comments, man.
Please do.
Let us know how have y'all ever heard of this story before? If y'all got more details, because the details are very faint. It was more straight to the point on this one, which is surprising. Ballen is a little different. And he tried to include all details, so you never know. But as always, man, y'all know how it go. I do go by the name DJ Kid. This is we are.
Go and get it. Ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar. Please